I'm Theron Q Ramacharaka. Welcome to the channel, or welcome back, as the case may be. If you like this video, please give it a like. If you like the channel, subscribe to it if you haven't already. Click on the notification bell. Share the joy. Those things having been said, let's talk about the turning point. The printing press. Now, the invention of the printing press. Now, it's often taken to be the case, it has been promoted to be the case that Gutenberg invented the printing press around the year 1440. The fact is, though, that the printing press has been in use in China since, I don't know, the Tang Dynasty was in place from about the year 600 to 900, from the 7th to the 10th centuries. And the oldest known printed book in existence is a Buddhist text called the Diamond Sutra, dated May of the year 868. So, while it probably is true that Gutenberg's press, his invention, is the printing press, is the occurrence with respect to printing press history that changed the world. The press was already in existence, in China at least. Now, excuse me. Interesting. Elsewhere here in this channel, I talked about a connection among the ancient astronomer Ptolemy, the king of Egypt, and Copernicus in my video about the Copernican revolution. Interesting, Copernicus was born a few decades after Gutenberg's invention in Europe. And Ptolemy is said to, either he or his successor, Ptolemy II, created the library at Alexandria, Egypt. Allegedly, the largest known library to the ancient world, some 200,000 books. So I say books. So wasn't the printing press already in operation back then? Well, no. Apparently not. All of those books were written manuscripts, not printed books. They were written manuscripts. And let's take a look here at something interesting. This is a painting. Well, it's a copy. A printed out copy of a painting that depicts an Egyptian at about that time holding a papyrus scroll, a written manuscript on papyrus in the form of a scroll. This is just an interesting side note here. Can you see this? The Egyptian, the scroll, and Anubis standing beside him. Isn't it interesting? You've probably seen pictures, images like this before. Anubis there. I first draw attention to the handwritten scroll, but secondarily here, incidentally, to this dog-headed person of a sort. Dog-headed. Why the dog head? Was this just a fantastical notion of some kind of a god? Or demigod, semi-god, under-god? A god. Some sort of overlord of mankind. We hear a lot of talk about that, you know, the dog-headed god, the bird-headed god, the fish-headed. But this is not the only context exactly in which dog-headed people of a fashion show up. There's been much written and said about such beings in various parts of the world. There's the potential, actually, for such a tribe or clan to still exist somewhere in India. Sometimes these groups of such creatures are friendly, sometimes they're not. In some cases, they speak the native language of the area, of the region. Sometimes they just bark. In other cases, they just bark. They have like their own language. Anyway, just thought that was interesting to point out. All right, back to the printing press. Of what importance is this to us today? Well, on one side, it's a marvel. The printing press, the advent of the printing press and the spread of its use, mostly with relation to the Gutenberg invention. It changed the world. It allowed for information to be reproduced without handwriting each copy. This made the spread of textual information much more rapid. And as printing presses popped up in various different locations, different countries, a copy could be made pretty much anywhere of the same book. Copies could be reproduced in differing locations, even further accelerating the spread of information. Excuse me. So, well, this allowed for advances of our belief base, our human belief base. It really expedited such affairs, okay? People gained more information. People were, let's say, this blends right in, dovetails in with increasing people's literacy. People would learn to read, then they'd learn to write more frequently. It has to do with the spread of information. And now today, further along in a chain of cause and effect, an orderly sequence of events, we have other forms of reproducing information now, sure. Because other advances have blended in with the advance of the initial spread of information involving the printing press. You know, we now have digital technology. We now have printers. We now have the internet, all ways to disseminate information. Marvelous advances, marvelous, and a significant, world-changing, through time, progress of methods to disseminate information. There's a downside. One of them points to this video. example, we've heard of the information age, or the age of information. That's to which that being what we're talking about here so far. But we are now a little beyond the age of information. Still in it, yes, but there have been some additions. We're also in the age of misinformation and disinformation. The dissemination of textual material now involves not just the spread of information, but also misinformation and disinformation. And it is difficult, given the glut of all three, to delineate the one from the other. All three of them, one from the other. To be able to distinguish one from the other. And it's just likely the case that with respect to disinformation, excuse me, that it is intentional misinformation. That's what disinformation refers to, the term disinformation refers to. So, we now have a lot of confusion over what truth is. As for example, we have no certainty at this point, over even the history of the printing press, because written history is easily passed off as information when in fact it's misinformation or disinformation. None of us who are alive now were there then, wherever there and then was. We're not there now. It's very easy to pass off in the name of information, printed information, and its cousin, spoken information then too, taken from written information, misinformation or disinformation. So, even the history of the printing press, as I've laid it out here, could be that could be incorrect now, right? This is a very good way to deceive our perception of affairs and hijack our consciousness overall. Propaganda, for example, brainwashing. And the more something is repeated, the more we encounter a certain bit of information, the more likely we are to accept it as true. In other words, to accept it as referring to facts of the world. I'm Theron Q Ramacharaka. Be well.